Master of Ceremonies, Nathan Cassar.
Well, welcome to the Justice Plan TV and podcast show, where we bring the wedding experts to your home to provide you with insider tips and knowledge to help make your special day go just as planned. Now, I'm your host and professional wedding MC, Nathan Cassar, and in this episode, I am so excited to introduce you to Glenn Millanta, also known as Sydney Celebrant Glenn, who is a fantastic and dynamic celebrant MC. Now, you may recognize this fantastic gentleman as the celebrant who married Nasser and Gabrielle in 2019 on season 5 of Channel 9's Married at First Sight. I really want to talk more about that. But he's much more than just a TV personality. He's a lot more. He's an actor, he's a presenter, he's a model. I have to probably make a policy that all of my future people don't look as good as me or better than me. Ex-radio announcer and copywriter, and these skills have helped him craft memorable ceremonies and perform them so that they're anything but boring. Now, but that's not all. Glenn also has a substantial online following for some of his awful, yet oddly addictive, his words, cheesy content creation. He collects vinyl records, is a movie buff, and enjoys a nice gin and far too many sweets. I'd say that is perfect for being in the wedding industry. Now today, Glenn will be sharing his expert insights on finding and choosing the right celebrant, what couples need to do legally to prepare to marry, and the cost of a celebrant and what you're paying for. Glenn is also a big advocate for encouraging couples to get creative and do their wedding their way. Now, in case you're already wondering what he's about to say, there is no right or wrong and nothing is off limits. And of course, Glenn is always here to bring a sense of fun to a couple's wedding. So we'll be talking about how he injects that very sense of joy into every ceremony he officiates. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from the one and only Sydney Celebrant Glenn. Glenn, welcome.
Wow, thank you. I honestly, I felt like that was a eulogy for...
What? You're not dying?
Maybe my funeral or this is your live segment. I've never had anyone build me up in such a way. I'm impressed.
Stop.
You've done your research.
No way. Are you kidding me? I think
it's amazing. Thank you.
I think you have me on there as if you haven't been built up like that before. You wrote half of that, so...
Look, I feel like that was a copywriter. And whilst I have experience in copywriting, I don't think I wrote half that, no. But I'm very impressed that you've done your research. Thank you very much, Mr. Cassar.
Of course, I absolutely have done my research. So, and of course, we've had the pleasure of working together before, and we were just talking before we started the show about how we've both commented to one another in the past that we are very similar in our approach, particularly when it comes to our onstage craft. So as though I'm not a celebrant and you are, we share a lot of fundamentals when it comes to engaging a crowd. But before we get into your talking points, I really, like I said, I want to go back to that. I know you probably get talked about this all the time, but you said that what I was most curious about your Married at First Sight sort of spot was that you said it was your very first wedding. How did that work?
It was actually. So I became registered as a civil marriage celebrant in 2017, and I was in the process of building a website, creating social pages. And my mother-in-law actually at the time was at a party chatting to, I think, a friend's child's boyfriend who just by chance happened to be a producer on Married at First Sight. And she mentioned at the time that her son-in-law was a marriage celebrant as well as an MC and had a background in media. And he was interested and said, get him to send me through some material, which I did. And then we had a quick phone chat. He asked me to send some photos of me in a suit, send some photos of what I would use on the day, and write a script, which I did, and then I got booked. And ironically, not only was it my first ever, well, actually, it wasn't my first ever because during training to become a marriage celebrant, we had to perform ceremonies, but it was my first one that wasn't, this is really hard to explain because it was a fake wedding. We all know maths out there fake weddings. But it was my first
you've just
one.
Broken some hearts out there.
I know, I'm sorry. But it felt like it wasn't a fake wedding the first time I ever did maths. I actually did maths twice, but the first time I did it for Nasser and Gabrielle's wedding, there was this really lovely feeling that this was real because the way we shot that first wedding was that we shot it from start to finish, with no stops for sound, with no production notes along the way. Things did change then, the second time I did it. And now I see, whenever I see maths, it's kind of cut up the ceremony in particular to a near, almost near its death. Like there is no structure of that ceremony anymore. Which is part of my issue personally, if I'm completely honest, about maths these days. I used to watch it because I love the ceremony and I love seeing the exploration of couples and their initial thoughts and hopeful attractions of each other, but then seeing that relationship play out. And I really got that sense with Nasser and Gabrielle. I actually thought, this is really funny, and Gabrielle and Nasser will probably hate me for saying this, but I left that wedding and I remember feeling like they were the real deal, and one day I was going to be their real celebrant and marry them. Now, I could not have been more wrong.
I must admit, I didn't watch your season. I in 2017, I was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on cruise ships. But do you still talk to them at all? Like, do you still keep in contact with them? I
do. I actually caught up with Nasser at an event the other night, an event for a new or a second season actually of a TV program called Love Me. So I caught up with him on the red carpet. We had a bit of a chat. And Gabrielle is a good mate of mine and we chat often. Gabrielle has now become a marriage celebrant herself. I've coached her through that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
So she's now
cool.
a marriage celebrant in her own right. Your Love Story by Gabrielle. She can be found if anyone is interested in finding her, an ex-maths expat. Not that I'm sending business away from me, but she's equally as fantastic.
Interesting, little hook, right? I love that. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but the other thing I was going to say was, ironically, that the first wedding, not only was maths my first kind of big wedding, but it was actually on my birthday.
Oh,
so I gave up my birthday.
Amazing.
I married at first sight.
A fake wedding on your birthday. I love it.
Fake wedding on my birthday. And then the second time that I did it, it was also on my birthday.
Oh, stop. That's amazing. Well, happy birthday when your birthday comes around again. Let's talk about real weddings for a second, because I know we just spent a bit of time talking about fake weddings. Let's talk about the real ones that you do, because you do a lot of real weddings a year and you're very good at what you do. How do people find and choose the one that really vibes for them? What would you say is what really goes in people's minds when they say, this is how I do it, and this is the person for me?
Yeah. Look, it is the $1 million question, if I'm honest. And it's one that we feel like we're kind of vetted in some ways, but at the same time, when I'm speaking to couples, I want to make sure that we're the right fit. I think the answer to life, and now that I'm in my 40s, people who ask me this, I'll always say the answer to life is connection. It's being connected to people. It's being connected to your craft or what it is that you do, your purpose. Your purpose is ultimately what kind of drives us all, connected to whatever you're so interested in. And I think when it comes to choosing this element, it's got to be someone that you feel connected to, somebody that you feel comfortable with, somebody who you feel that ultimately can bring you out in a ceremony and perform that ceremony so beautifully and in the way that you want it, which can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. The industry has changed quite a lot, even in the time that I've been a marriage celebrant. It used to be largely performed by, older men or women, and I'm certainly not ageist by any means. Some of the older celebrants that I know are absolutely sensational, and I'm big fans of what they do. But it's also introduced, also seen the introduction of a lot of younger, vibey celebrants. Now, I guess my style, when people ask me, is, and for anybody that is considering me, what is my style? Yeah. What you see is kind of what you get. I'm a big fan. I'm a bit of a gushy romantic, if I'm honest.
I know. I've listened to your ceremonies before. You are a ham, and I love it.
I'm a bit of a ham. I do like structure to a ceremony.
Of course.
I do like keeping some of the traditionality to a ceremony. I think for me that's important. So whilst I do know there are other celebrants who won't do things like the asking, they just don't see it as something that we need to do. Now the asking is when you'll say, Nathan, do you come here today of your own free will to take Natalie Portman to be your lawful wedded wife? And of course you'll say, I do. Now, that is not a legal requirement. But for me, I just think
Mm.
that part when a couple says I do is kind of synonymous with a wedding. So I
Yes.
like to keep some of the tradition in, and I keep largely a traditional structure to what I do.
Mm.
Um, but I then infuse some of the little fun elements if couples are up for it.
Yeah.
And one example of that, it's probably less fun, but more making it personal for the customer, is really crafting their story, and
Mm.
not in its fairy tale form. It's not Disney unless the couple is, they're Disney fans and that's the way they want their story told.
Yeah.
But it has to be real and authentic. I think when you're telling the couple's story, I have a set of questions that I ask my couples to understand them, to understand how they met, who made the first move,
Mm.
what first attracted them to each other, what they love about each other, what things they have in common, what irks them about each other. Like, I want to know everything. I'm a bit nosy like that. Now, when I find I learn all of that, then I kind of consider, what do I think is the bedrock of their story? What is the
Mm.
foundation of their story that really makes this couple work so well? And how do I bring that out in a ceremony? How do we celebrate that in their ceremony? So then I kind of craft the ceremony largely around their story, but then
Mm.
I add in some of the traditional elements because I think it makes it feel like a wedding. But then if they're up for it, again, I'll add in some fun because I think what that tends to do is relax the couple. And
I
I
love
mean,
that. Yeah.
this is not, it's not relaxing. Let's face it, standing there in front of
Well,
people,
no.
it's, it's nerve-wracking for people.
True, true, absolutely. And I think it's great that you're giving people that option because, as you know, there's like almost 10,000 celebrants in Australia now. It's creeping up to that number very, very quickly. And
Damn
so
them.
and so like there's a lot. Like you type in Google, like you're gonna find so many, and it is one of the most overwhelming things that couples can go through. So it's I think the best what you're to sort of distill what you're saying there is basically is that the best of you are able to say, here I am, this is what I'm about, and then couples then have the responsibility to be like, does that work for me, or do I need something a lot more zany? Do I need do I want someone who's willing to dress up in a costume, or do I want somebody who is just purely great at those Legos only in the courthouse, just get things over and done with kind of style? And that's totally fine. Like I think, but I love that there is that option there that is expanded in the last, say 10 or so years in the industry. So speaking of sort of away from like all the flowery, it's like beautiful stuff that obviously the copy, so to speak, that has to go into the wedding. Let's talk legals for a second. Sounds a little boring, but very important, obviously. What are the main fundamentals of the legal requirements for a couple when it comes to getting married?
For anyone wanting to marry, what you need to start with is the notice of intended marriage, which is a
Okay.
form that we refer to as the NOIM, the acronym, and that needs to be completed and signed by an authorized witness anytime 18 months out from a wedding, and lodged with a celebrant anytime 18 months out, but no later than 1 month before the solemnization of that marriage.
Rightio.
That's the first thing. That's really important.
Mm.
And no matter how many times I've said this in the past, you'll occasionally get a couple that maybe aren't as uh, well planned or as structured or as disciplined with their planning, who
Mm.
will sometimes let that slip. Now, what
Mm.
happens if that does slip is they
Okay.
then need to apply for a shortening of time via a prescribed authority via a court.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah, it is quite intense, right? So, which is
Yeah.
why I'll always emphasize when I first chat to my couples, and I back it up with emails, and I'll say it's really, really important. It's critical that if you want to marry, you need to serve your notice to do that.
Mm.
And you do that via the notice of intended marriage form that I will send you. Jump on it now so that you don't forget. Once that's done um, and lodged with the celebrant, you don't have to wait. You don't have to worry about it. And
Oh,
closer to your wedding date, then it's really about just building your perfect ceremony. And, a celebrant like me would then build the rest of the legals for the day that the couple
oh, perfect.
would then
So
sign.
basically, there's one big thing they need to make sure they take care of individually
One
for
big thing,
themselves.
one big thing, but then there is another, a declaration of no legal impediment,
Ah.
which has to be signed, which is like a stat dec.
Okay.
which is basically saying that there's no legal reason, there's no legal impediment to their marriage. There's no legal reason they can't marry each other.
Like they're currently perhaps secretly already still married or something like that?
Absolutely. So basically, that is saying I'm marriageable age. So I'm an age that I can marry. I'm not in a prohibited relationship. I haven't suddenly realised that we're brother and sister. Um, the law in this country does allow you to go kind of adjacent. You can marry aunties and uncles and cousins and that sort of thing, but you can't go up or down a line.
Right.
So it's basically saying that there's no prohibition in terms of the relationship to this marriage, and there's nothing legally that would stand in the way of us doing this. Marriageable age, not prohibited to marry, and there's no other legal reason that I couldn't marry this person, and we would then sign that. Now, lots of celebrants argue this point because the Marriage Act actually says, I can't remember the specific wording, but it says something like as close to the wedding as possible. Now, what most trainers in the industry will say, it's roughly around 10 days, 10, 14 days at a stretch. Some celebrants will argue and say, well, I'm catching up with this couple 6 months out, and this is the last time I'm going to see them before their wedding day. This is as close to the wedding as possible, so I'm going to have the couple sign that form, which
Right.
There's different schools of thought. I've tried to sit on the closer side of the fence and do it as close as possible. If I'm lucky enough to be able to see that couple, within a couple of weeks to their wedding date, then I'll have them sign it. I'll take it with them if we're doing a rehearsal or catching up. But largely what I do is I have them sign that form on their wedding day. Now, what they have to do is sign that form before they marry. So normally one of the parties to the marriage is there before the other. So I'll have that person sign the declaration of no legal impediment. And then when the other party arrives, I always step away from the ceremony space and go and check on the other party and make sure that their nerves are okay. They don't need anything before we start. They don't need a toilet break. Sometimes if it's a bride, there might be an issue with a veil or something. We've got to fix something, or, things do tend to happen. Or sometimes if, I've found in the past, if a couple has kids before they marry, the page boy, the flower girl needs to go to the toilet. So we're kind of waiting for that to happen. So it gives me time to check on everyone. We then sign off that declaration of no legal impediment. I then step back and we're kind of ready to kick off and start the ceremony.
Wonderful. So it really sounds like it's a really, like, I don't mean to make it sound reductive, but I mean, even from someone who's not a celebrant, like outside in, if I'm getting married at some point, it sounds like it's actually not that difficult. There's just a process to follow, and as you say, structure, some element of structure in the back end is really important to reduce the stresses that may come in those last 30 to 45 days of a wedding in the lead up. So listen to your celebrants. I think that is the best
listen to your celebrants, people. Couple other things. So with the NOIM, obviously with that, if you have been married before, you'll need to provide evidence of the dissolution of any previous marriage, or of the last previous marriage, and you'll also need to provide some ID. So all you need to marry in terms of ID is a passport, or in lieu of a passport, a birth certificate and a driver's license.
Huh. There you go.
Now, so that's in the lead up to the wedding. Then on the wedding day, after you've signed the declaration of no legal impediment, the ceremony is performed. If you're signing within the ceremony or after the ceremony, you'll then sign 2 official certificates of marriage, and you'll sign a commemorative certificate. Or the fancy name we use is Form 15. It's very fancy.
Ooh, very sexy.
Very sexy. So those are the other. So basically on the day, we need 15 signatures.
Oh,
if
really?
you consider, yeah. So we sign, we're obviously signing 2 official certificates of marriage, and we're also signing the commemorative Form 15, right? So that's the celebrant. We're signing 3 times. The bride and groom, or groom and groom, or bride and bride, whoever they are, needs to sign 3 times. And then they're witnesses. So there needs to be witnesses, 2 witnesses, 18 years of age or over, obviously. They need to sign as well. So that's 5 of us signing. By 3 is 15 signatures.
Oh, okay. I thought for a second I was like, oh wow, 15 people. That's a lot. So okay, no, that it's see again, like I just it's so easy once you've got it all sort of underhand and like in that bullet form you presented it so nicely. Like I think that can be a point of stress for people because it's such an unknown. But yet that doesn't when it's all laid out like that. That's actually really simple. So as I said before, listen to your celebrants. We're running out of time, Glenn, because I knew
Are
this would
we?
happen because you and I are just
We talk too
intensely.
much.
We do. It's what fellow entertainers
We
do.
like this.
But
We like the sound of our own voices.
but I do want to talk about something that you and I, as I said at the very beginning, where you and I vibe quite strongly on in the sense of is what we're both about, and it's about sort of injecting the fun into the weddings. So ceremony and reception because we're both MCs. What is some of the ways that you recommend that both you can personally interject fun and creativity into a wedding, but then also generally some great things you may have seen out there that couples are doing that really just take their wedding to the next level and actually make it so that people talk about them for the rest of their lives?
Oh, look, I'm a huge fan, as you pointed out in the intro, of doing it your way. And I'll always say to my couples, there's no right or wrong. There are legal things that have to be done, obviously, and we will take care of those. But beyond that, I encourage couples to research, jump on Pinterest or jump on YouTube or, watch Instagram videos, jump on websites, read up on traditions or rituals, but feel free to change those things. I recently performed a crowning ceremony, which is traditionally Greek in somebody's ceremony using the Stephanias. And we did an abridged version because obviously in an Orthodox church, they are performing those ceremonies or services in Greek. Now, obviously, I don't speak Greek. I can say a couple of phrases, probably not appropriate for this chat. But I came up with a way of modernizing that. So ways that you can bring fun is through traditions or rituals. You can, perform a hand fasting, an old pagan tradition, or incorporate a wine box ceremony, or incorporate children, or, there's lots of weird and wonderful things that you can do. But beyond that, there's things that you can include in the ceremony that really make it pop. Before the ceremony, if I start there, I found out, well, I realized very quickly that guests don't always look happy, which surprised me
Oh.
at a wedding. They don't always look happy when they're kind of sitting down for the first time, and I don't think it's that they're unhappy. I think it's that they're not just sitting there smiling. And I wanted to come up with a way of encouraging people to actually enjoy, the moment and almost give them permission to have fun and enjoy it, right? So I came up with some ceremony activities. So I've got an activity that I perform a lot before the ceremony begins, and that's largely for guests to get them excited. And it's how well kind of do they know the couple situation. But then during the ceremony, there's some little fun activities that I've developed for the bride and groom, or bride and bride, or groom and groom, for them to kind of find some lightheartedness, some light and shade in the ceremony, and some laughs and have a good time. So it's basically activities that I've created to bring some fun into them. But in addition to that, there's things like, scissors, paper, rock for who goes first with vows,
Yeah.
witness, lotto, you could draw names out to have your witnesses step up and sign papers.
Yeah.
It basically is endless. I've had people do shots at the end of their wedding ceremony to celebrate the fact they've just become legally married. I've got a groom next month who is doing the Russian tradition, Jewish tradition rather, breaking the glass. So in a napkin, or basically going to stamp on the glass, and the more breaks that glass tends to make is more of a positive thing for the marriage. There's lots of weird and wonderful things you can do. I guess my guidance for couples is to have a chat to your celebrant and get them to give you a list of different options if you like, but then look beyond that. I had a couple once said to me they met in sitting in a gutter outside of McDonald's after meeting having a late night out and enjoying some drinks and probably having a few too many, they decided they'd have some sneaky cheeseburgers on the way home.
Wow.
And they wanted to incorporate that. They wanted Uber Eats to turn up, give everyone a cheeseburger while we told their story. You know,
I love that.
so you can really make it your own. I've a couple of times now in 7 years of me being a marriage celebrant, I have performed 2 surprise vow renewals for
nice.
elderly grandparents who were celebrating a milestone anniversary very close to the couple's wedding date. So I'd suggest, well, why don't we surprise them? So while we set up the couple and their love story, we then kind of give a nod to another beautiful love story that's, celebrated so many years. And we take them through the process of renewing their vows, and I give them a certificate, and everyone cries. We all cry, and we all, party the night away.
Oh, see, I love that. I love the tapestry of difference when people just take a moment to obviously leverage people like yours and I's sort of experience and things that we've seen before, but then also take it upon themselves to look a little bit introspectively and think, okay, it doesn't just have to necessarily, of course, if they want it, that's fine. If they just want the straight and narrow, let's just get married, let's do it. That's cool. But it's great when you're paying service to the guests that have come all this way as well to celebrate with you. And, I'm sure it's a big focus, like as you mentioned before, with the games you do and stuff. I do a lot of games myself during my receptions, and it's all about making sure you're definitely paying tribute to the guests that have come to make sure that they're happy as anything they possibly could be, so that they're going to give it all back to the couple at the end of the day. So I love that, and there's so many things you can do. Glenn, we have unfortunately run out of time. It kills me. I know, it's insane. I totally expected this.
One thing I will say as well, because you
Please.
mentioned it before, is choosing me as your celebrant. I'm a bit of a chameleon. I'm like you, Nathan, and because we have a background in entertainment, me in media as an actor, presenter, radio announcer, etc. I can be the chameleon. So if couples really want me to dress up as their favorite Shrek character, I'm happy to do that because I'm a performer.
Please invite me to that wedding.
I definitely will. Or if they want to keep it really traditional and beautiful, we can do that too.
Absolutely.
Just find someone that you really connect and vibe with. Because as civil marriage celebrants, as you mentioned, with almost 10,000 of us, there are so many amazing ones. And I get a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes when I look at other people's content. I go, oh, wow, they're so good. But
no, but don't get like that,
there are
Glenn.
so many people that are good. You've just
I look at your content and I think the same thing.
Stop it. Likewise, I think we both do that to each other. But just find someone you connect with, because at the end of the day, we're all human. And, the difference between, I think, you and me, Nathan, is with our backgrounds, we can play the chameleon. We can be whatever you want us to be for your wedding day, really. Not everyone can do that, I don't think. But couples are so sport with choice for both ceremony and MC.
And for every other category of vendor that they can possibly ever wish to have as well. It's a real game out there. But Glenn, you've definitely given, I'm sure, our couples listening today a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us, and I cannot wait to work with you again. It was a pleasure the last time, and I'm sure it'll be equally a pleasure the next time. Take care, and I'll catch you around.
Thanks for having me. Take care, guys.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Just As Planned TV and podcast show. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found some valuable insights and tips to help you plan your dream wedding. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on our channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date with our latest episodes. And if today's episode has inspired you in your own wedding journey, feel free to let us know in the comment section, or simply send through any burning questions you may have to hello@justasplan.com.au. We wish you all the very best in planning your big day, and we hope your wedding goes just as planned.